Okay, so just going to discuss variability and response in terms of training. I'm going to use a couple of case studies um, with lifters that is real time. So the response that you're going to be seeing was from the last 3 weeks. I'm going to put each response in context, as in where we are at the minute, what the goal is, what aspect of the program we're going to be looking at, what the plan progression for that aspect of the program was, and then what the result was. But basically, the take home from this is going to be why you should never freak out or worry about a response. Um, Variability is baked in to biology, so we're going to get an input, uh, but what the output is going to be is going to vary. So that's why we should really not try and be emotional to our response. We shouldn't be overly excited when good things happen, and we shouldn't be overly depressed when bad things happen. Okay, so agenda. We're going to look at the case study. We'll look at the plan. We'll look at the response, and then we'll have some commentary on kind of what's happened and kind of how we look at that. So, case study one, we have a 120 kilo plus male lifter. They're entering a ramp up into competition. Session one, bench press will be what we look at. So this is an easy volume session. It's 4x4. We're looking to stay below a 6 RPE. Starting at 4 to 5 RPE, certainly staying under 6. Pre-baked in decisions, if it comes above a 6, if we start hitting 7s and 8s, action will be taken where we'll either look to take weight down in the session, or we'll look to scale back that aspect of the program, or this might be a decision point to look at reducing frequency, reducing volume in the week with specific lifts. Assistance will be looked at. This is basically one of the aspects of the program where we're looking at skill. We're also trying to work on different aspects. So we're currently trying to work on bar speed off the chest. This is a section to try and help the lifter to work on that, but it's a canary in the coal mine for me. If this session, which will be easy the whole time, if that starts creeping up, that's a flag for me that we need to take action in terms of dosing or volume load or intensity load. We need to take some proactive steps. What we're doing with this aspect of the program, we're using force progression, so we're just ramping in intensity, and then so we have a bake in. So week 1 70%, week 2 the plan progression was 75%. We took the output from week 2 and adapted, so we took a 2.5% increase rather than 5% increase, because I thought 5% increase was going to be too aggressive and we weren't going to get out of the session what we wanted. We are going to just end up pushing into higher RPEs, higher stress loads than I thought was desirable for the session. So we modified the 2.5% increase, but we're still doing the weight. So for the lifter, they can use the RPE to modify if they wish, but they're not as advanced on that aspect of training. So I'm trying to be a bit more proactive with the choices that I'm making. They're logging RPEs, getting used to RPEs. We're still trying to get to learn response for the lifters. So things are more top down. We try to bring some bottom up elements into the program, but it's more of a. That's why I've termed them as an intermediate. It's not really respective of strength level. Sometimes it is more respective of strength level, but it's more an appreciation for their understanding of training and training response and how to guide their own training. So for this lifter, I probably dictate more than they help guide. But over time, that should shift towards them being more involved in the planning and execution of training. So the response, week 1, 120 kilos was the load. We got 0.28 meters a second average bar speed. RP reported was under 6. Week 2, 127.5. So that was that 5% jump. Average speed 0.18 meters a second. Reported RP 5. So the speed, bar speed, wasn't really what we were looking for. So we took a smaller jump. The next week, 132.5 kilos, 0.22 meters a second. So bar speed's up. Reported RPE is up as well. So that's also something to be cognition of. Just RP and bar speed, although they are related, they aren't necessarily one and the same. So it's useful. I always think it's useful to have these metrics. I use WL analysis for this. So when a lifter sends me a video, if I think it's something I want to look at, I'll track bar speed and use that alongside the lifter's reported RPE. And that gives me two metrics, one objective and then one subjective of the lifter actually relating what the response was. So some discussion on that. Whilst the sessions are low RPE and unlikely to phase the lifter, so that means that there's going to be a bit less bias in terms of how the lifter feels about the session. We'll see for the next example a different scenario. But this is it's a low important, it's probably seen as less important a session. There will be less anxiety, there'll be less want for the lifter for this session to go well. Not that they don't want it to go well, but if they have a bad session, they're less likely to freak out. But from the response, you can see we had a 36% decrease in bar speed from a 4.4% increase in intensity, followed by the next week where we had a 22% increase in velocity from the previous week after an additional 4.1% increase in intensity. Take home from this, heavier loads don't necessarily mean further decrease in performance. It is perfectly possible for you to add weight and for it to be easier and for the velocity to go up. What we see as well, there's an individual variance in response. The lifter reported a slightly higher RPE of 5.5, when in reality the objective outcome is actually easier because the bar speed's increased. Assuming that WL analysis isn't complete bullshit, but I find it to be pretty reliable. And as always, it's the lifter's videos, so it's the same video. So they send me the videos from their camera or their phone, so it's the same camera that's taking it in, so that does reduce the variability. So I actually think it's reliability from video to video or from rep to rep in the same video is very good, I think. Whether those are the actual velocities, I don't know, but I find it very reliable, so I'm quite happy to use it in that process. So case study 2, 93 kilo male lifter. I would say intermediate to approaching advanced. We've been working together for longer. We have more discussions. They have a better understanding of how they respond to loads. So in context of what we're doing, this is an intensification cycle 2. So we've had a couple of volume cycles, and we're currently just in. We have competitions on the horizon, but they're quite far in the horizon. So we're more developmental kind of blocks. We're not really looking to reach specific goals. Although we're trying to get stronger, obviously, but we're not trying to hit X rank by X date. This is our second intensification cycle. This is session 1 for bench press. This is the focus session, so this is high importance session. The aim for the top set is to sit between 6 and 8. We don't want to go above 8 because it's going to stall out our progression. We only want to go above 8 if we're going to try and hit personal best, or we're going to try and achieve something by going outside of 8. Below 6, we're not really going heavy enough. So these weights were discussed. So I started at 86% because it was going to be low enough in RPE for me. And then progressions were discussed. So they looked like week 1's 86%, week 2 90%, and week 3 was 93%. And this is at 9. This is their PB. This is basically what they've managed. Their actual estimated RM is higher, but I'm basing it off their actual RM rather than estimated RM. That's why there's a bit of funk. Because like 86%, 2 at 86% is really like should be like around RP 8, and like 2 at 90% should be RP 9, and 2 at 93% is probably like an RP 9.5. But their estimated RM and their actual capability is actually higher than we've managed on bench. So that's where this fucking words. This is what I'm calling discuss progression with a modifier. So the intention is to progress, but not at the expense of bar speed or to come out of the RP bracket that we've set. We discussed before the start of each training week the goals for each top set, and what we're going to do with the down sets, and the lifter has the autonomy to adjust. So they understand kind of RPEs, they understand the context of the block, they understand the context of where they are, so they have a bit more of ability, they have a bit more latitude in the process to modify. So the actual response. So week 1 at 130 kilos double, average bar speed of 0.28, 0.23 meters a second. We don't have RP data for this lifter because we use a different platform that doesn't really allow it. But they understand the RP and we discuss it, and we do talk about the RP on a weekly basis, but we don't necessarily log it because we use a different platform. Week 2, 135 kilos, the average speed was 0.22 meters a second. And then week 3, so the game plan for week 3 was a repeat, because the lifter and I were happy that 135 was within the remit of what we wanted, but we weren't necessarily happy at the time that an increase was going to still maintain that remit. So we had agreed a double at 135 and then move on to down sets, and we might keep the down sets static. With an idea that we could review the velocity data and then see, based off the velocity data, the video, and how the lifter felt, what we could do the next week. The lifter was obviously feeling good. They bumped it up another 5 kilos, and they actually managed to increase the speed from week 1. So 10 kilos heavier than week 1 at a faster speed, average speed. So there's a focus session, so the stress response is going to be a lot higher. The perceived importance of the top set is very high. The closer you get to like a one rep max PB in the training, the more interested and the more stressed powerlifters get about their performance. The agreed intervention was to repeat 135 as discussed, but the lifter was also satisfied with the 135 and decided to increase. This resulted in 7% heavier load than week 1, so 140, 7% heavier than 130. Moving at 4.3% better bar speed than week 1. So we're 10 kilos heavier than week 1, and we're doing it at faster bar speed. So that's another example of heavier doesn't necessarily mean slower. Heavier doesn't necessarily mean harder if you allow it to develop and don't freak out or don't stress it or don't put too much pressure on it. I'm probably going to do another case study where the progression has been forced and kind of where that's left the lifter, that lifter being me. But that will probably be, well, I'll do another one of these, but it'll be in a different scenario where progression has been forced and where it leads. Right, so take home. Variance response is the only guaranteed outcome. Literally, when we do a program, we do an intervention, the only thing that we can say for a fact is that something is going to happen, and that it's probably going to be different from the last time. And there will be a trend. The trend might be up, the trend might be down, the trend might be the same, with a little variation. But variation is the only guarantee we have with biological systems. When we have an input, the output might be similar, it might be better, it might be worse, but it's going to be different. Good and bad outcomes will happen, guaranteed. There is no need to intervene, stay the course and see how it develops, because you can't really make informed choices with interventions if you're constantly changing shit. there's a time for intervention and there's a time to sit on your hands. So sometimes the best thing to do is just to continue on with the plan, see what happens. Even if you think that the outcome is going to be negative, it's still worthwhile doing, because you can see if it is going to be negative or not, and that might inform future choices. But the main point being, you can't learn either as a lifter or a coach if you're constantly fucking around with the variables. If you're constantly changing three or four variables every week in the program, then you can't really take anything away from that. And if you're constantly changing variables on a whim, so if you start a program and then you get an outcome, but the outcome isn't necessarily what you want, so you change it, and then the next outcome isn't necessarily what you want, so you change it, and then the outcome is good, but you want more of it, so you change it. So if you're constantly messing with that process, you don't have a process. You just have fucking random shit thrown against the wall. All right. Hopefully this is useful. And I'll see you later. I'll do another one with me as the guinea pig, because I think it'll be quite useful. But hopefully this is useful for you and it can inform some of your decisions going forward. Goodbye.